Namaskar. Welcome to this edition of National Perspective. Today we are going to discuss the much discussed about resignation of senior Congress leader Ghulam Nabi Azad. And what does it mean for the Congress and the nation? What other political parties can learn from the allegations Mr. Azad has made on the Congress leadership in general and Mr. Rahul Gandhi in particular. This entire discussion about Mr. Azad's resignation unfortunately revolved around only one topic, that Azad Hue Ghulam, making some kind of sense out of his name. But is it really true? What does it mean when Mr. Azad, after staying such a long period in the Congress with all these allegations, now leaving the Congress, is it to just do with these allegations? For me, what is not said by Mr. Azad is much more important than what he has said. The emotionally charged resignation letter, hurling accusations against Rahul Gandhi about his childish behaviour and coterie culture, frankly speaking, didn't surprise many. It is a known fact about Congress. Even the discussion revolving around, no point of return for the Congress in many parts of India, that is also a well-known thing. Usual sycophancy, and degraded behaviour with the senior leadership. This is nothing new. What Mr. Azad said is one interesting fact which many neglected. He joined Congress during the emergency period. He was a close associate of Shri Sanjay Gandhi. He started from Youth Congress as a leader. He opposed the Janata dispensation and paved the way for revival and rejuvenation of the Congress party founded by late Mrs. Indira Gandhi in January 1978. The problem started with Indira Congress. The Indian National Congress was gone and Indira Congress started. And all these problems, the allegations that he has made, actually rooted since the formation of Indira Congress. Where was consultative mechanism? Where was respect for senior leadership? Where were those voter list and free and fair election and democratic process within the Congress party? Did really Sonia Gandhi followed all those norms when she dislodged Mr. Sitaram Kesari? Why Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, after a tenure of 5 years, was insulted even after his death, and then Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad didn't utter a word? Mr. Azad also spoke about the organizational affairs. The organizational affairs was in tantrums for a long time. It was a dynastic party. It has been a dynastic party and nobody spoke about it. Losing elections, there has been, ups and downs. It's a political party. But what has happened in last 8-10 years is monumental. And still, Mr. Azad was very much there. And therefore, the response by Congress, opposition parties are of course questioning the Congress leadership, making a mockery of Mr. Rahul Gandhi. The usual sycophants are defending and using, all the abusive words against Mr. Azad. But I think this letter and Mr. Azad deserting a party with which he was associated for around 5 decades has much bigger lesson, not just for the Congress, but the entire party system in India. All political parties should pay heed to what Mr. Azad actually did not say. Yes, respecting elder leaders, having a balance between old guard and new guard, this has been a perennial problem for a dynastic party like Congress. And other regional parties also follow the same pattern. And that's why we see the same kind of problems emerging in other political parties. Eventually we'll find the same kind of tussle of leadership in NCP or TMC, because they are offshoots of Congress culture. And therefore, this charge resignation letter should be seen in a larger national context. It is not just a party problem. The Congress culture that was developed and that eventually became a political culture of India, barring few political parties like Bharatiya Janata Party or Communist Party, which were ideologically rooted and cadre-based party. The party structure, which is an important pillar of our democracy, has been neglected, scuttled for the dynastic interest. And the Indira Congress culture actually paved the way for this kind of politics where individuals are above the party interest. When it was called as Indira is India and India is Indira, this was in a way disconnect from the Indian National Congress as a movement with a national perspective and pan-India presence. Claiming legacy over independence movement has been an old habit of Congress leadership. But this dynastic consolidation, sycophancy, institutionalized corruption, overall degradation of the party organization, all these follies have been closely associated with the Indira part of the Congress. Of course, these ills were there even in the Nehruvian Congress. But there were certain leaders, that can be seen by in the letters of Gandhiji immediately after independence, the discussion that took place in the Punjab Assembly immediately after partition. That is a clear-cut symptom that Congress actually is inheriting the entire corruption culture that was started by the British. So amassing wealth, misappropriating property after the bloody partition, which was talked about in the Punjab Assembly. But the differentiating factor was the organization and some kind of ideological commitment shown by some leaders. So there were people in the party who could question the leadership. They could instill some sense of public morality and conduct. But most of these problems actually took roots in the Indira is India mindset, and ironically, Azad didn't talk about it, that psyche that originated during the emergency. The personality-centric politics is obvious corollary. The family-centric politics is obvious corollary of degradation of the organization. The same is true about the ideological position. Nehruvian Congress, one can always question about whether that ideology is right or wrong, but there was some position. The socialism and secularism is a classic case, the way unscrupulous politics was introduced in India, and casteism, communalism, market monopoly, crony capitalism, all the ills that we see today, which were used for electoral gains conveniently. Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh as an organization was made a convenient punching bag to defend secularism and create a sort of fear in the minds of so-called minorities. Unaccountable communist ideologues. Almost Congress outsourced that ideology to these people. Now what has happened actually is The Nehru-Gandhi family's coterie is the continuation is same. Indira, Sanjay, Rajiv, Sonia, and now Rahul, the democratic farce and sham as far as party organization is concerned, continue to be the same. The difference lies in the organizational structure and the ideological position. Now, the neo-left ideological forces have almost taken over Mr. Rahul Gandhi's coterie, and that's why we see him taking a very difficult, compromising position on core national interest issues such as Article 370 or relationship with China, and all these matters actually are detrimental to the national interest. For the political party to stay relevant in Indian politics, they must learn lessons from this monumental decline of the Congress party. Of course, the leadership is important, and leadership will remain important to inspire the party workers and people in general. But it is the organizational strength, organizational structure, organizational democracy, along with a clear-cut ideological program that is going to inspire and that is going to take the party forward. I think if the bigger lesson that we should learn from Mr. Azad ouster, whether forced or voluntary, is basically that we need a more vibrant political party structure and political culture which is based on participatory organization and ideological moorings that has roots in Indian culture and ethos. I think this is the larger message that we should get from this resignation. Mr. Azad will find his own way either in Jammu Kashmir or elsewhere, as we are seeing from the support that he is getting there. The larger question is, what does it mean for Indian democracy? We of course need a strong opposition with a national perspective, a nationalist orientation, a nationwide presence. And in that sense, I feel that Mr. Azad resignation poses a greater challenge, not just for Congress, but for our inter-party democracy and party politics as such, because there is no emergence of alternative that we can see at the national level. Regional parties will always have their parochial interest and again dynastic based leadership, somewhere corrupt leadership, where caste based or communal leadership. And in that sense, if we really want to evolve as a vibrant democracy, we have shown our resilience, our vibrancy over the period of time. But now what we require is a more participatory party structure with inner democracy phenomena and clear-cut ideological position that is rooted in the somewhere in the Indian culture and Indian national orientation. With this national perspective, I would say कि ये आज़ादी झूठी है. Ghulam Nabi Azad, most of the allegations have been true since he actually joined Indira Congress. What is now challenging is that the forces that are detrimental to national interests have taken over the coterie, and the leader is not in a position to control the organization or ideological position. That is the real challenge. I hope all other political parties will learn a lesson and we will see a newer kind of party politics in coming days, taking inspiration from more cadre-based and ideologically oriented party with vibrant organizational structure. This is all for this edition of National Perspective, and I hope you would like and appreciate this kind of analysis. If you enjoyed this edition of National Perspective, then please do like our channel, subscribe it, and share it with your friends and family members. Namaskar.